Let's trace the State Department situation here. So we've got the State Department supposed to be first witness up. They are officially not coming?
Correct.
No show?
Right.
AWOL?
Yes. Officially
Absent
notified
without
the chairman. Yep.
permission, okay.
7,000 employees down the street, can't send one.
The State Department?
Yep.
Yeah, so they're AWOL. I'm actually planning on saying that. I mean, and I may add something about the ambassador at large, but I think it's, okay, this is first of all, just so you know what's going on here. This is very typical Washington. What you've got is 24 hours before a hearing that will be widely circulated. Regardless of how many people are actually in the room when you give testimony tomorrow, it's going to be on their closed circuit, it's going to be then taken to the various, we will have it delivered, and C-SPAN probably plays it in a week or two.
Right.
So, but the State Department has made a conscious decision to not show up. Now, I want you to think about this as the wife of your husband. You should be personally offended. Don't be so nice. Your husband's an American citizen.
Yep, I understand. I was not happy with the phone call today.
And him saying that you're the lawyer in Iran. So let's get this down exactly. Okay, so first of all, two things. One is, they know that Tiffany is representing you. Of course, we're representing you, but she's the primary contact lawyer. She should have been on the phone call. You understand they did that on purpose?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why I had Tiffany write the letter back today to them, CCing me. Everything now is CC'd to me, copied to me.
Oh, so she wrote them back?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, I had to write back.
And if they do call you again in the next 24 hours, they violated now a request from your attorneys. And that's for a real, it was a letter to cease contacting you at all without us included. So that has been made very clear, and he is CC'd on all of those emails to them now. Okay. So this desk officer now knows that the head of the whole organization, who's on TV every day, that you want your name out there with this, probably not. But that is another discussion we have to have too, is do we name the problem that we can perceive in this? And I think that's, some of that is up to you. Is this person the problem, or are they communicating a message for someone who's the problem?
I don't know. I just know that.
Every time you're on the phone with them, you seem to be fairly upset.
They?
You.
Every time it's been me and them, it's been pretty, I feel like I've been tried to be played or put under, directed.
That's because
like today,
yeah,
I felt like they were trying
to play it.
I felt like I was trying to be played today, so it was my first really firm, because I felt like they were trying to tell me, you want us to think about this, it could hurt your husband, and we really waited because of you and because of what the lawyer said in Iran. And then they were also trying to have me say, oh, I didn't make a direct request, you're right, Tiffany was the one. And they were trying to get something from me so they can say, here.
Yeah, well, let me tell you what, because I want you to feel good about this, about the international pressure. Naghmeh Saeed, the UN rapporteur, here's what he said to the London paper. At least a dozen lives were saved because of the intervention of international opinion. Talking about Iran. So the State Department right now is trying to figure out how do they cover themselves, because that's why do we know?
They have informed Chairman Wolf that they will not be there. Could they change their mind? Yes, but they have already told the chairman of the commission they won't be there. And I think just for your mental state, I think they've got this backwards. They work for you, okay? They work for Saeed, he's a citizen, he has full rights. You don't have to go to them requesting anything. It's their job to work for your husband.
My name is Marcia.
And I am Marcia.
In 2009, we were thrown in Evin prison for our faith and were held prisoners there for 259 days.
One thing that helped us bear the horror of Evin was letters of encouragement and hope from the outside.
Our friend Pastor Saeed has now been in prison for over 6 months. Go to SaveSaeed.org to find out how you can send a message to Saeed.
To send Saeed a message, click on the icon at the top of the page on SaveSaeed.org. Feel free to customize the text and let Saeed know of the more than 500,000 people that are standing with him globally. Please take note of a few guidelines while composing your message. Sign your name at the bottom of the message and we will print your letter and send it to Saeed in Iran. Our goal is to flood Saeed's prison with letters of encouragement. And if you haven't already, please sign his petition at savesaeed.org.
The hearing will begin. I want to thank all of you for being here today to discuss the worsening plight of religious minorities in Iran. Particular thanks to our witnesses, some of whom have traveled long distances to be here with us. Actor Woody Allen once said that 80% of success is showing up. Yet even after requesting only 20 minutes of their time for testimony and questions, the Department of State remained unresponsive and ultimately said no. Unfortunately, this is hardly an exception. There's been a disappointment on human rights. This is the second hearing in less than a year that the Commission has convened to highlight human rights abuses in particular countries, abuses which have resulted in the imprisonment of an American citizen. In both cases, the administration seemed disinterested at best. More broadly speaking, there seems to be an inherent bias in the State Department sometimes on these issues that dealing with the issue of faith. Last year, in the last Congress, we had a bill passed which would set up a special envoy to advocate for Christians and other religious minorities in the Middle East. And I want to announce that we're going to keep the record open to give the State Department an opportunity to comment. And we'll keep the record open for another week. And it'll be telling if they don't comment, and it'll be significant if they do comment, both on the case of the pastor and on the case of the Baha'i. So there is an opportunity. And the comment that I made with regard to Martin Luther King's silence of your friends. So if there's silence of our friends by the State Department over the next week, that'll be very, very telling. But if they do speak out boldly and given that opportunity, that will be very telling. Dr. J. Sekulow?
Thank you, Mr.
Your
Chairman.
full statement will appear in the record. You can proceed as you see it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of Congress, for being here. You all have taken a bold step. You continue to, and we appreciate your ongoing work. And on behalf of all of my colleagues at the American Center for Law and Justice and our global affiliates, I want to thank you for allowing me to come before you today about the situation, the rapidly deteriorating situation in Iran, especially as it relates to religious minorities. Just so the Commission understands, we've heard from over 500,000 people, actually 512,537 people in just a few weeks that are concerned about his situation. With our ongoing legal representation of the Abedini family, we are keenly aware of the vital importance of this hearing today. But there is a fundamental problem for Saeed Abedini's case. I'm a litigator, so I spend most of my time doing. You always look at where's the problem. The problem in his case is that the State Department is AWOL. They are absent without leave. They are missing. They did not show up today. They did not show up at the United Nations. They act as if they are embarrassed about Mr. Abedini's faith. Rather, all 27 EU countries at the United Nations called for the release of Pastor Saeed Abedini. The United States was silent. Australia demanded his release. The United States was silent. And I think the State Department's refusal to appear before this committee today is extremely troubling and frankly offensive. It's offensive, and I look at it first from a legal standpoint. Sure, it's offensive from a legal standpoint. But it's offensive to Naghmeh Abedini, the wife of this pastor. And if his children were old enough to understand the scope of what was going on, it would be offensive to them as well. That their government, the State Department, snubbed this commission. And that cannot be seen as anything less than a wanton disregard to stand up and speak out for someone who cannot speak out for himself right now. And I also believe it reveals a stunning lack of concern for protecting human rights and religious freedom. The failure to appear today and to testify, frankly, is inexcusable. We've had some dialogue with the State Department over the last several months, and I will be honest, Mr. Chairman, it has not been pleasant. The lack of concern, the lack of engagement has been problematic in our work to free Pastor Saeed Abedini. This week, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in Iran said, and I quote, "Unfortunately, a preponderance of reports communicated to him this past year indicate that the situation for individuals in Iran who advocate for the advancement of human rights is grave and continues to deteriorate. A majority of human rights defenders continue to be subjected to harassment, arrest, interrogation, and torture, and are frequently charged with vaguely defined national security crimes, which is seemingly meant to erode the front line of human rights defense in the country, which are their lawyers." Mr. Chairman, I work with their lawyers. I will tell you that the situation they're under is grave. Let me say this also with Saeed Abedini's case, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about this later, Mr. Chairman. They've actually charged him with being a Christian. The same thing was true with Yusef Nardakani. They will say it's crimes against the state, but we've actually translated the documents because we've obtained court documents in cases involving these Christians, and they're charged with being Christians or operating house churches. Iran's legal system is an absolute sham. Its persecution of Christians and other religious minorities, including some Muslim groups, as you mentioned, including the Baha'is, is entirely skewed, making the government the judge, jury, and unfortunately, in many cases, the actual executioner. We cannot sit, and I know this commission is not going to, we cannot sit idly by. Ahmed Shahid, the UN Special Rapporteur, has said this: at least a dozen cases, lives were saved because of intervention and international opinion. A dozen cases where lives were actually saved. Part of that international opinion has to be the White House and the State Department not simply responding to questions, but proactively intervening. Saeed Abedini is an American citizen. And whether it is an American citizen, Saeed Abedini, or Iranian nationals being denied fundamental human rights, it's now time for the United States to lead by example, show the world that religious liberty and human rights are the very foundation for peaceful and secure societies. And Mr. Chairman, I want to again thank this commission for taking the lead on so many of these issues and your steadfast leadership in support of human dignity and religious freedom, and the members of your commission around the world, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Abedini, you may proceed as you think appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to share my testimony, and Congressman and Congresswoman for allowing me to share our family story. My name is Naghmeh Abedini. My husband is Saeed Abedini, who has been sentenced to 8 years in prison because of his Christian faith. We have 2 children because he converted from Islam to Christianity. We have 2 children, Rebecca and Jacob. This picture was taken and the request of Saeed recently. He wanted to see the recent picture of our kids. Yellow is his favorite color, so my daughter wore that yellow dress, and every time his parents see him in prison, they put this against the glass window. And for the whole 20 minutes, he just looks at his children's picture. And our family is definitely suffering during this time. I'm hoping the kids don't know about the 8-year sentence that Saeed has received and what that means. I'm hoping I won't have to ever tell them, and that we can work together and bring Saeed home to our family. Within a few years, within a year after our marriage and a few years of ministry, we saw, as you know, the people of Iran, we saw thousands of people accept Christ in Iran, and a house church movement growing. Unfortunately, after President Ahmadinejad became president in 2005, we saw an increased persecution of Christians, and we left Iran in 2005. Came to the US, and Saeed became a citizen. I was remembering when he did become a citizen and how excited he was, and he would jump up and down. He was crying, and he received a letter from our government saying the flag of the United States of America. This is to certify that the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol at the request of the Honorable Carl Levin, United States Senator. This flag was flown for Saeed Abedini on the occasion of receiving his U.S. citizenship March 11, 2010. So I had to dig through and find this, and he received this flag, and he was holding it and waving it, and he was proud to be an American. So I wanted to bring this because it was a very special time in his life. Even though Saeed enjoyed being in the U.S. very much, he still had a very strong desire to go back and help the people of Iran and those he left behind, including his family, his parents and siblings. In 2009, we decided to go back to Iran and visit family, and unfortunately, at that time, he was arrested, as mentioned by the intelligence police, but he was allowed to come back to the U.S. And the promise that he would discontinue any house church movement activity, which Saeed has complied to this day. But Saeed did tell them that he is a Christian and he does want to serve the people of Iran, and they did allow him to start a humanitarian effort with starting an orphanage, which that was since 2009 and 2012. is what he's been working on, and traveled more than 10 times on the efforts of opening that orphanage and helping orphan kids, the least of these, the orphans and the widows. Although Saeed fulfilled his promise, the Iranian government did not. Saeed visited Iran in July of 2012, hoping to finish completing orphanage. And on July 28th, he was taken off a bus by the Revolutionary Guard. He was put under house arrest for 2 months. I remember our kids would continually be able to hear his voice and see him on the computer on Skype. And the day he was taken, and we didn't know where he was for a week, they kept coming to the computer and saying, "Mommy, can we see Daddy? Can we hear his voice?" And I kept saying, "No, we can't." You know, I couldn't explain to them why, that he was physically taken to prison. And finally, they kept saying, "Does Daddy not love us anymore? Does Daddy not want to hear our voice anymore?" And I had to tell them that he was in prison because he loved Jesus, and that he loved them very much, and he was looking for the day to come back and tuck him into bed. Our family nightmare began in September of 2012, and we've been fighting for his freedom since. As mentioned earlier, Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "Silence in the face of evil in itself is evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." I must say I'm disappointed with our government. I'm disappointed that our president and our State Department has not fully engaged in this case. Disappointed that this great country is not doing more to free my husband, a U.S. citizen. I expect more from our government.
My name is Marcia.
And I am Marcia.
In 2009, we were thrown in Evin prison for our faith and were held prisoners there for 259 days.
One thing that helped us bear the horror of Evin was letters of encouragement and hope from the outside.
Our friend Pastor Saeed has now been in prison for over 6 months. Go to savesaeed.org to find out how you can send a message to Saeed.
To send Saeed a message, click on the icon at the top of the page on savesaeed.org. Feel free to customize the text and let Saeed know of the more than 500,000 people that are standing with him globally. Please take note of a few guidelines while composing your message. Sign your name at the bottom of the message and we will print your letter and send it to Saeed in Iran. Our goal is to flood Saeed's prison with letters of encouragement. And if you haven't already, please sign his petition at savesaeed.org.
In the Evin prison, Saeed's dealing with beatings, tortures, and he's continually told to deny his Christian faith, which he will not. He will not back down on what he believes. He has internal bleedings, he's suffering, and every day in that prison is a death sentence for him. He was, as everyone knows, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison on January 27. I realized that Americans are not all Christians, but every American, regardless of their beliefs, wants to be reassured and know that our government will take decisive action to protect us if someone uses force to try to make us abandon or change our belief. That we should know as American citizens that our government will stand up to protect our beliefs, our fundamental human right. Saeed is an amazing husband, an amazing father. The kids, and I miss him terribly. Some mornings the kids run around the house and go outside and search in the yard, and I ask them, "What are you doing?" And they say, Mommy, Daddy was home. He was twirling, we saw him. And we had it, and I look at him and they say, "Mommy, was that real? Or was it just a dream?" And I have to hold myself together to look at them and say, it was just a dream. But I'm hoping and I'm asking for help. It was told that I have not asked directly for help, but I've pleaded many times, at least in the media, and many times I've asked the U.S. government to do whatever I can to free my husband from that prison, simply because he converted from Islam to Christianity and he's a Christian. And his human right is being broken and is being violated. And our family needs your help. Our family needs your support to bring my husband and their father back home. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I can speak, I think, for all the members here. We'll do everything we can. Mr. Jordan Sekulow.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday morning, as Naghmeh Abedini was boarding a flight to Washington, D.C., she received a call from the desk officer at Near Eastern Affairs. This is at the U.S. State Department. The desk officer that on the first day she called, within 24 hours of her husband being arrested by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, told her on the phone, "There is nothing the United States government can do for you." When that desk officer made the comment, someone from the Department of International Religious Affairs, who works for Ambassador Susan Johnson Cook, tried to break in. This desk officer cut them off, said, "I have authority. There's nothing we can do to help. You can keep us updated with the facts if you like." She received the same phone call from that desk officer moments before boarding a plane, after we have informed the U.S. State Department and this officer specifically to stop contacting the client we represent as her attorneys, as the family's attorneys, without us on the phone. Did it moments before her flight and said, "You've never asked us for help. You've never asked us for help. Your attorneys may have communicated. You may have been on those phone calls even. But you've never asked us for help." As you can see now, they knew this hearing was about to happen and are trying to cover their tracks. Someone at the U.S. State Department is taking out references to Saeed Abedini. It is not the Department of Religious Freedom. It is not the ambassador at large, whose office has not yet been fully empowered to engage this situation. And like they did for Pastor Youssef Nader Khani, who they have done more for than they have an American citizen. Now, the U.S. State Department did find time to mention an Iranian who was killed in Evin prison in their remarks to the Human Rights Council last week. They did not reference an American citizen alive in that same prison being beaten the same way. The European Union did. Australia did. America, silent. You have the world speaking out for Pastor Saeed Abedini, but not his own government. So rightfully so, it is discouraging that Pastor Saeed's case is just not being addressed at that level, even with the public outcry. Again, over 500,000 Americans, the media coverage, as you can see today in this hearing, the interest that the public has about a Christian pastor who is an American citizen who is not getting the same kind of support as others. You wonder, is it his skin tone? Is it his name? Probably not. Maybe it's because he is a convert from Islam. It's a little bit more controversial than the political opponents our administration has had no problem getting behind and, of course, mentioning directly at the UN Human Rights Council. So let me just say in our closing, we want to identify, so we have identified the proper individuals to begin working with at the U.S. State Department. We need the State Department, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Johnson Cook should be empowered there to work directly with us, to be able to have the freedom to do that. She is not at this point. She's been very effective, and we view today's hearing as the Commission's commitment to this cause of freedom and human rights. And I ask all members of the Commission to encourage our President and Secretary of State to lend their voices as well. Let's make it clear that Naghmeh Abedini and her attorneys have asked directly for their involvement, and we're waiting for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will make a request on behalf of the Commission for the Secretary to meet with Ms. Abedini. And so we'll do that. We'll circulate the letters to everybody here.
It's shocking that the State Department has had that reaction, and so hopefully there'll be no doubt about their knowledge after today of your desire to have their help. And so it'll be very clear for the record. So I'm hoping that this commission today and this hearing will resonate throughout Congress and hopefully will resonate through the State Department.
Chairman, let me just say to Mr. Sekulow and to Dr. Sekulow as well, you really give fresh meaning to the idea of competent counsel, but you go beyond it. You go the extra mile, and I've watched you in action for years. And Naghmeh, I don't think you could have people more committed and more competent at your back, getting what has to be done on a daily basis. So congratulations for that, because thank you for your leadership on this. This does represent, in my opinion, a colossal failure on the part of leadership by the Obama administration. That's not a partisan dig. I have been in this Congress, like Chairman Wolf, for 33 years. We work on human rights every day. I chair the Human Rights Committee, the China Commission, and the Helsinki Commission. There has been an indifference, especially to Christians who are being persecuted all over the world by this administration, that I find detestable. And it's got to change.
I want to make one last thing. We did call the Secretary's office while we were meeting, and the Secretary's office got back to us and said he will call me around noon. Wow. And we are going to ask that the Secretary or somebody representing him who really has the authority, but the Secretary, to meet with you. And hopefully that meeting will take place today. But the Commission will stay with this thing until the release takes place.
It was a good meeting. Ambassador Cook is going to be personally involved from here on, and the Bureau of DLR has assured us that they're going to be working on the case, which has not been the case in the past. So that's a big victory, and we're going to hold them to it.
My name is Marcia.
And I am Marcia.
In 2009, we were thrown in Evin prison for our faith and were held prisoners there for 259 days.
One thing that helped us bear the horror of Evin was letters of encouragement and hope from the outside.
Our friend Pastor Saeed has now been in prison for over 6 months. Go to SaveSaeed.org to find out how you can send a message to Saeed.
To send Saeed a message, click on the icon at the top of the page on SaveSaeed.org. Feel free to customize the text and let Saeed know of the more than 500,000 people that are standing with him globally. Please take note of a few guidelines while composing your message. Sign your name at the bottom of the message and we will print your letter and send it to Saeed in Iran. Our goal is to flood Saeed's prison with letters of encouragement. And if you haven't already, please sign his petition at SaveSaeed.org.